Early nominating contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN is the place for political campaign enthusiasts, with unfiltered coverage surrounding the early primaries and caucuses, as well as speeches from key battleground states. Whether you're interested in your state's race or want to follow all of the political events, you can get immediate access to what the candidates are saying, plus nominating results in real time with the free mobile app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
You're listening to the best of the best of the best of MIP.
With honors.
This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
God bless you all. We are rounding out our Selma coverage today with Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was part of the Selma movement. We spoke to him during the Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee, the 56th anniversary Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee. And someone else we'll talk to whose father actually inspired me to become more involved in Selma, because that was one of the civil rights events he went down there to get involved in, and that was Malcolm X. The daughter of Malcolm X, will also hear from her today, Ilyasah Shabaaz. Hope you enjoy. We've been praying for him as he's been recovering from some of his health challenges. Joining us from Chicago, the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, Sr. Reverend.
Mark,
Hey, man.
how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you? You look great. Look at you.
Well, I feel good, too. You know, actually, what happened was, fighting the Parkinson's some time. My father had it, so it's congenital. But then I had an emergency surgery, and it caught up with me. So for a week, I could not walk, could not talk. God bless me. I'm walking again, talking again. But today, Jonathan, my son, river is in Selma, Alabama. Let me talk a bit about Reverend Dr. Richardson's sermon, one of the most profound sermons I've ever heard in my life.
Yes, sir.
About the blood. But in Selma, it was our Bethlehem, where some great was born. Dr. King and others missed it at the first. Miss Boynton, who was the president of the Dallas Bowls League, came to Chicago, came to Atlanta on Christmas Day in 1964, along with Reverend Reed, and said, Doctor, you guys must come Selma. Dr. King was busy. He said, well, finally, he said, I'll come. He sniffed something about to happen there. The Bloody Sunday occurred. He was in his pulpit in Atlanta, got a note to come to Selma, and beckoned us to leave school and come there and meet him on Monday, and I did just that. But I want to say, but the South represents a new day. August 6th represents, again, a new majority in America. You had African Americans who couldn't vote. Most white women could not vote, serve on juries. 18-year-olds could not vote, those in Vietnam. You could not vote on campuses. You couldn't vote Native Americans, you couldn't vote bilingually. And that's a new majority. When it stands up, it elects Obama, it elects Joe Biden. That group has power. It all comes from August 6th in Selma, Alabama. And we were fighting an enemy that's talking about Democrats, Republicans. People we were fighting with Democrats. George Washington was a Democrat.
Right.
Bull Coleman was a Democrat, except they were Jefferson Davis Democrats. When we got the public competition in 64 and voting right in 65, they changed. Today's Republican and yesterday's Jefferson Davis Democrats. All of them who are the Republican conservative, they're just Southern guys who changed names rather than allow us to share with them. 65. Therefore, the Confederate spirit is alive. Jefferson Davis is still alive in them. I look at the bill just passed, $1.9 trillion. You know who was a part of that? The two senators of Delaware voted against President Biden. Of the 8 who did not vote for the relief bill, 2 senators were from Delaware. Isn't that astonishing?
Yeah.
To divide him in that way. So Selma has big meaning for all of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you said, you were there. In fact, I think the story goes, Selma was so significant to you you started to name one of your children after Selma, didn't you?
Jesse Jr. was born while we were in Selma, and we got the telegram. You hear the telegram, telegram?
Yeah.
Yes, I was a day, but I thought better of it, at least my wife did at that time. But it had great meaning. We know what it would mean today, but, you know, they say Lincoln freed us. We saved him. We should read the Emancipation Problem. It was a great document. He saved us, those he could free. We saved him. Blacks who had been the feeder line to the Confederates left from emancipation, 200,000 joined the Union Army. We saved Lincoln because the Republicans, the Democrats already as far as Antietam, Maryland and Gettysburg, blacks repulsed that drive. We saved America from Trump, the logical successor, Jefferson Davis. That's why they're so upset about our voting, because when we vote, we change the course of the country.
Yes, sir.
We saved the country from slavery and union, saved the country from Trump. So our vote still has redeeming power.
Yes, sir. Now, I also recall, and folks, as I've said, that we always share a lot of stories when we're all in Selma together face to face. You also told us once of a situation where I think you and Andy Young were fleeing some of the police horses and went into the projects, which are right across the street from Brown Chapel, where we just left the broadcast, folks. And you went to a woman's house, and I believe she told you she knew who had killed Jimmy Lee Jackson. Do I have that right?
Reverend C.T. Vivian.
It was Reverend Vivian, okay.
Coming out the back door of Brown Chapel, and we saw cars going on the street on the other side of the project. He said that they're looking for me. We turned up into the project, and the door was open. I ran out and jumped out the car and went in the house. She said, "Who is that?" I said, "We were Dr. King." She said, "Sure enough, CT came." She said, "You sure y'all were Dr. King?" CT said, "Yes." "You sure?" She said, "Can I trust y'all?" And we said, "Yes." We had prayer. She said, I watched the riots up yonder at the agents at the Chinese place. And the men who come in here, they had this, they always talk about black people. And when the minister left with the round collar, she said, Reverend Reed, with the round collar, they followed him. They came back blood on their stick. Now, when they said they didn't know, they lied. I said, "But please don't tell it." We went to Miss Borden's house. Dr. King was in the bed. By his side was Howard Thurman's Jesus Disinherited, because it occurs to be, Neba's Nature and Destiny of Man, and the Bible, kind of stable books for him. And he called Robert Kennedy at that time and told him, "We know now who killed Reverend Reed." That God was all in there in Selma.
Again, one of the martyrs of that struggle in Selma, folks, that Reverend Jackson is speaking of, the Reverend James Reed. This 2020 was a year we lost so many. Everyone has talked about John Lewis, but since you mentioned Dr. Vivian, talk a little bit about Reverend C.T. Vivian's ongoing legacy.
He was a minister, a little older than we were, of course. He's 93, 94 now. I'm going to say this. He was a couple of steps in front of us. He was a theologian of sorts, activist theologian. He went to Parchment Prison, in fact, serving time, the struggle. Always buoyant and effervescent on the case. And he left Selma and came to Chicago to the Urban Training Center. Proceeded Dr. King to come to Chicago. He never stopped preaching. He never stopped teaching. By the way, Brendan Jordan, the brother beloved, Brendan Jordan,
yes.
So much to us.
Yes.
Brendan, I remember him taking Charlie and Hunter and Hamilton Holmes in the University of Georgia, along with Constable Baker Motley in whenever it was, in Georgia. There's a new South now, in many ways. Alabama plays Clemson, my heart rejoiced, because you look at those black and white players there together, to me it's bigger than a football game. But I submit this to you, Mark, in closing, that the South is the key to our kingdom. So more slaves than were slave masters. 5,000 lynchings and church burnings occurred. They drove us out the South. Now we're going back. 25% blacks in Atlanta and Georgia 4 years ago, now it's 32% black. Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi can replicate the victory in Georgia. Blacks and the core of white people have the power to change the South and therefore change America.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reverend Jackson, it's so good to see you. I know everyone's happy to see you. We've been praying for you. You look great. Glad that you're doing better and glad that you're able to participate in this 56th anniversary Bridge Crossing Jubilee, as you always have. You've been with us every year, man.
Well, I was there in '65, and I missed John Lewis. But let me tell you, John Lewis and the guy by him was Jose Williams. He was not just a prop; he was SCLC.
Yes, sir.
Representative Dr. King and Mickey Boynton. The three of them were beat that Sunday.
That's right.
John Lewis and Jose Williams and Miss Boynton. They humiliated her for her dress and beat her on the butt. Humiliating her.
Yeah.
She took it like a trooper.
Yes.
Mickey Boynton, C.T. Vivian, Jose Williams, as well as John, deserve to be honored on this occasion.
Yes, sir. More MIP after this message.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save money on your insurance? Of course you would. After all, who wouldn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all of the things in your life, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage. You could save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you could save.
Reverend Jackson, we love you. Continue to stay well. We're praying for you. We love you.
Take care of Jonathan. He's with you today.
All right. Sure will. Thank you,
Love you,
Reverend.
brother.
All right. God bless you now. Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. So good to see him and glad he was able to join us on this morning. Again, we're going to have a pre-march rally soon. We've got some other special guests joining us in the next few moments. We've got a special message, too, from Joe Biden. Many of you saw Vice President Kamala Harris during the Brown Chapel service, and then we'll also hear from Joe Biden during this segment, so you want to be sure to stay tuned. You all have also heard me invoke the name of Malcolm X. We are honored now to be joined by the daughter of Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and the daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz, Ilyasah Shabaaz, joins us here for the Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee. Ilyasah, Queen, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Hello, walaikum salam. I'm fine. How about yourself?
I'm good. So glad you could join us. You know, as you know, and you've always joined us in Selma too over the years, Ilyasah. You know, one of the things that drew me to Selma years ago to participate was the fact that your father even came to Selma, and it really spoke to the importance of that little town, how significant it was, and also what it meant for your dad to be there and actually inject himself into that civil rights struggle.
Absolutely. The civil rights struggle involved, all of us, it involved his people. My mother often talked about how much her husband loved his people. He provided the biggest critique of America. And, he said, listen, America must live up to her promise of liberty and justice for all. And so wherever there was injustice, which was just about all over the world, especially against indigenous, Aboriginal, Black people, my father was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we also know that him being there, he spoke at a Brown Chapel in early February. I believe it was February 6, 1965, invited by SNCC. In 2019, in one of our last walks across the bridge with John Lewis, Ilyasah, I asked him what it was like, because he was in Brown Chapel when your dad spoke. And I said, what was it like to see Malcolm X and meet Malcolm X? And he said, Reverend Mark, he was not what he was portrayed to be in the media. He talked about how gentle and how humble your dad was. He said it wasn't what they were led to believe he was, and they were just all touched by his gentle spirit. Even though he was such a powerful man, they were really touched by his gentleness and the words he spoke to them.
That's right. You have to be a man of great compassion, and great faith in order to speak truth to power the way Malcolm did, and to provide shock treatment for the descendants of hundreds of years of brutal, terroristic slavery. And, that's what Malcolm did. His parents instilled specific values in him for him to step up and step forward, on behalf of the 22 million people in this country, African-American people in this country. And, and my father did just that. When people were marching, demonstrating, protesting, he stepped forward and said, listen, we demand our human rights as your brother. We demand our human rights ordained by God. And Malcolm was serious.
Yeah, no question about it. More MIP after this message. We should also note, after coming to Selma, your father came to Selma, left Selma, shared the pulpit with Mrs. King. There were some old timers that told you and me years ago, they aren't around anymore, that they believed that your dad even went to see Dr. King in Birmingham in jail when he came through Alabama.
That's right.
And so there's that. So then on February 18th, Jimmy Lee Jackson is martyred by the Alabama State Police. 3 days later, your father is martyred on February 21st, actually on John Lewis's 25th birthday. It seems to me that the trajectory was headed toward your father and Dr. King and others coming to a greater place of the very unity that your father had called for with the Organization for Afro-American Unity.
Yes, both Malcolm and Martin, or I should say Dr. King and Brother Malcolm, even though their philosophies in some ways varied, their respective moral principles enabled them to unite and work for the best interest of 22 million African Americans. Both men set out to strategically improve the quality of life for their people, all of which were embodied in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I think it's really, it's such a disservice to portray this false image of Dr. King and this false image of Malcolm, and that we must choose one over the other, which is such a divisive tactic. And that's not something that we want to instill in our children. We don't want to instill these values, of hate and discrimination. We want to instill the values of love, respect, and pride, for ourselves and for the leaders that we have in our society.
Yeah, no, very, very well put. And people do need to understand that is a false dichotomy. We'd be remiss, of course, the big discussion these days is the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. But you have uncovered a document relative to your father, someone who wrote something who was a former member of the NYPD. Can you share with us a little bit about that and where that is?
Well, what I can say is if there is new evidence about who actually organized this assassination of my father, of my 5 sisters, and my father, then we certainly would want it uncovered.
Yes. And
we would want the Manhattan District Attorney and the U.S. Congress to do a thorough investigation.
Yes. Okay. We would most certainly hope for that. Give us a quick report on the center, the Malcolm and Betty Shabazz Center. A lot of great things going on there.
Oh gosh, yes, we have so much great things happening at the Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz Center. We hired this really dynamic young lady who is from the Harvard Divinity School. She just got her master's. She's phenomenal. She created a Freedom School curriculum while at Harvard. And, we just have so many, phenomenal programs, intergenerational, action-driven. We want to make sure that we can retain the attention of these young, developing leaders, all of whom, in spite of this pandemic, we're out in the streets in 50 states in this country and 18 countries abroad, proclaiming that Black Lives Matter after witnessing this horrific death of George Floyd. So we have great programs, and we welcome everyone to go online and find us. We're in social media to join us and help with creating all of this great work that we have.
Yeah, please, we do encourage people to support the work of the Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz Center. Before we go, we do want to acknowledge one of the most important speeches your father gave was at Selma's Brown Chapel. And one of his most oft-quoted statements, for those who didn't know where he made that statement, we remember Malcolm X saying this, and we hear him, his voice oftentimes, saying to young people to learn to see for yourselves, think for yourselves, and listen for yourselves. For those you may not know, he was directly addressing young people in Selma at the members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And that was a statement about how much faith your father had in the younger generation coming behind him.
That's right. You know, one of the things he said is that it would be this generation of young people who would recognize that those in power have misused power, and that they would be brazen enough to step forward and demand change. And, you know, we saw indications of that this past summer. You know, and another thing, you know, the education curriculum is, you know, one of the areas that we focus most on. And so one of the things that we talk about at the Shabazz Center is if in world history classes, the truth that Africa is the cradle of the most advanced civilization ever to exist in mankind, and these impressive kingdoms of Futa-Jello, Benin, Ghana, Mali, Egypt, all of these empires, if they got even half the attention that Greece and Rome do in our American history classes, we might better appreciate the present complexity of Black civilizations around the world without learning and instilling values of hate and discrimination, but focusing on love and respect for ourselves and humanity. And so, yes, my father believed that it would be this generation that would step up and step forward, and that is what we have all witnessed.
Yes, yes. We thank you so much for joining us and for the work the center is doing. We always appreciate you being a part of Selma every year. Thank you so much, Sister Ilyasah.
Thank you so much also. And, you know, we are remembering all of those brave young soldiers that marched across that bridge, and knowing full well what lay ahead for them.
Yeah, amen. All right. Thank you, Sister. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, darling.
All right. Take care now. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.